Hello and welcome to Take Your Time, a Persona 5 podcast where we play Persona 5 Royal in real time according to the in-game calendar, which is also our real-life calendar because calendars are sort of the same, but they're off by one day, but we made it work after we had a breakdown at the beginning of recording the show, but we're doing it now and we're almost at the end of the show and I'm gonna cry about it, but not yet. We still have some weeks to talk about, so let's get there. I, of course, am your host, Jonathon Dornbush, for this week. My co-host is figuring out whether to thumbs up or thumbs down those comments I just made. Tom Marks. How you doing, Tom?
Hello. I'm great. I'm excited.
I am too. For those wondering, for this week, week I say in quotation marks, we are talking about the events of a few days, but not really days. These are sort of the days of, it's February 28th through March 6th, but we are only really talking about March 2nd and March 3rd because those are the only days that exist in this calendar week for the game.
Yes. Short days.
Yes.
But like kind of juicy in terms of stuff that's talked about.
Oh yeah, I actually refreshed my memory like an hour before we recorded because I had seen these scenes a little earlier and was already getting choked up, and I know we're going to get to like the end of the game, and I know my emotional reaction last time. It's one of like the few games in the last couple of years that I just like bawled at the end. So this should be interesting. But yeah, we're going to talk about those 2 days, and then we're going to jump into our thoughts on the party as a whole and rank these people that we've come to love over 100 hours, because that's what you do with your good friends. You rank them without their knowledge. That's what every good friendship group does. But we're going to do that, of course. But before we do that, we do have some housekeeping to do, including a pop quiz answer from last week. Tom, why don't you set up what the question was again for us?
Oh boy, let me remember. Oh, yes. So it was a very complicated, stupid one that I didn't think I saw any correct answers on, and I did my best to reconfirm that this is the correct answers. But like, for if I got something wrong, let me know. But forgive me also because it is very convoluted. So I asked which palaces. By my count, there were 3 palaces that you go into the least amount of times, and 3 palaces that you go into the most amount of times. Not including if you took extra days to complete the palace, and not including the Mementos Palace and Maruki's Palace, because those you only go into once and a billion times, respectively. So, Jonathan, did you have any theories here?
I do, but so what's interesting is because it's 3 the most, 3 the least, and then you take out
I think.
Those 2, and then there's basically only 1 palace that wouldn't fall into either bucket. Is what that creates. Because there's 9 palaces total, right? Including Mementos and Maruki?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah.
Yeah, so...
Wait.
I've broken Tom. We're only a few minutes.
Yes, there's only one that fits in the middle.
Okay, so with that in mind, I was thinking about this after you said it last week. There was one answer I think I saw, but I'm not sure if it's right, but Jake did write in the comments on YouTube.
The smarter thing to have done in retrospect would have just been to ask what that middle one is. But, you know, like, that's not a thing I thought about.
That would have been a shorter answer for sure. But so the ones, it's really, really hard. I think the ones that you can do in the least amount of days are... I feel like I'm wrong. I should know this better.
Right? It's hard. Like, this is a hard thing.
I'm going to say Kaneshiro, Shido, and Sai. And then for the others, I'm going to say... Actually, no, wait. What about Okumura? Crap. I'm going to say Kamoshida... No, not Kamoshida. I'm going to say Madarame. Madarame. I am totally lost now. Madarame, Okumura, and... Yeah, I'll say Kamoshida for the other one. I don't know.
Okay. So... You didn't do terribly.
Okay.
By my count...
Yes.
There are 3 palaces that you go into only 3 times, including the boss fight. Which means you only get kicked out of them once before having to send the calling card, basically.
Okay.
Which is Futaba, Okumura, and Shido.
Okay.
By my estimation, those are all palaces that you go into to investigate, leave, and then get the infiltration and can just do the palace that day.
Gotcha.
Or at the start.
So I think I said 2 of those. I think I did Futaba and Shido.
And don't have some sort of like, aw, dang, we hit a wall.
Yeah.
Because Futaba's does have that, but Futaba's is when you open it, it is also sending the calling card.
Right. Okay. That makes sense.
The middle one with 4, I believe, is Kanashiro.
Okay.
And then the top 3 are Kamoshida, Madarame, and Sai with 5 each.
Okay.
Now, here's the trick to this trick question. There's a couple... Okumura could be weird because technically Morgana and Haru go into it more times than you, but I didn't really count that. Sai's Palace, you only go into 4 times for gameplay, but Joker goes into it an additional 5th time that they do show on screen in order to check the underground police interrogation room to make sure it'll work for their plan.
True.
Or maybe not. I think Joker's there, but it actually, now that I'm thinking
there's a couple
about it,
people checking.
There's a bunch of people checking that room, and you do go, like, check it out.
Yeah.
If Joker is not there, and I'm misremembering that, which could happen, then technically that one would only be 4 that Joker is there for. But yeah, it's like, it gets muddy there, but Kamoshida and Madarame, you do go into 5 times each.
Okay, so
and then
I think
all the ones after that don't force as many trips.
So I think I guessed those 2 for the longest, and then I think I guessed 2 for the beginning. I don't remember what I just said about 2 minutes ago, so someone who's listening back to the tape will probably have a better memory than me.
Yeah, I think you were like 2 and 2 on each.
Yeah, which I'll take. That's 2 out of 3 for each. Ain't bad.
It's just I wanted to do this one because I thought it was hard.
Yes,
even for me, but B, because we just played this game so much, right? And it was over the course of a year, but like I've played this game now 3 times. And it is so easy to forget how many times you go in, how many times you're forced to leave, how many of those little like roadblocks there are and in which palaces. It is really interesting.
Yeah.
How kind of complicated that can all get in retrospect.
Oh, totally. Especially because I think for me, I don't think about some of those earlier palaces in that way, because usually the like, oh, you're stopped and you need to come back out, I think is presented to you first with Madarame.
Yeah.
And then it doesn't feel like it happens that much, but you already did go through like jumping in and out of Kamoshida's a bunch, you do jump in and out of Madarame's a bunch, so it does sort of happen, just not presented always in that way.
Yeah, and Madarame's is especially weird because when you go back in, you get Yusuke and have to leave again.
Yeah.
And so there's like an extra one there. Where then it's like Futaba is you do get kicked out and have to go back in, but then that doesn't actually count as an extra one, really. Whereas Sai, you get kicked out twice, I think, because there's the first time and then again with the high roller room where you have to go to the courthouse.
The different levels.
And then so it's like a bunch of stuff that is just very complicated. And then some of the other ones, like Shido, are basically just like, oh yeah, we're good, right? Oh, we see it? Okay, we should bail for a bit, and then you just come back and you do the palace.
Well, and it's funny because Shido's, you would think, oh, it's the last one, they'll probably make you jump in and out a bunch, but also it's such a long one. I'm glad they don't, because that would have been kind of a nightmare.
Yeah. Anyway, that was the complicated question, but I'm glad we revisited that because it's weird.
I appreciate it, and that's about going to do it for us this week on Take Your Time, so thank you so much for listening.
All right. All right now.
No, before we do move on to the next few days, I did want to just read a couple comments from the YouTube version of the show, which you can go to youtube.com/Dornology and leave your comments on each week's show. I'm also going to the audio version to make sure I didn't miss anything, but I don't want the audio version to play out loud because that would be embarrassing. It's not like we've been doing this for 48 weeks. But these comments come from the YouTube version. The first comes from Sasha, who says, I'm like 12 weeks behind, but because I know the show's wrapping up, I'm trying to catch up. Listened to part of today's and wanted to confirm that you still get beaten up on February 15th if you hang out with the boys and not your girlfriends. I dated every girl confidant in my first Royal playthrough. I felt icky and couldn't pick one to spend Valentine's Day with, so I picked the boys thinking I'd be safe, but I wasn't. which is helpful info to know as we continue the question of Valentine's Day and the day after. But thank you, Sasha, for that info, and
later,
and hope you enjoy catching up through the rest of the episodes. We do have some rankings that I want to mention, but before we do, Elec did also follow up from last week, and to Tom, that is my nitpick about my most memory scenes in pop culture. They're always in third person, which makes no sense. Thank you for verbalizing that. Also, do Barrett and Tom live near each other? Because it sounded like cars were racing outside of Barrett's like they usually do at Tom's, which did happen, and I meant to call it out. But I think that's just San Francisco for you. There's just a lot of street racing.
Yeah.
They really should set the final Fast and Furious here. In addition to that, though, of course, we were talking last week about a surprising fact from ELAC, I believe, revolving Chihaya, and they said, I do apologize. I didn't completely fact-check my assertion that week. I was... no one in the comments had said it. It was someone on Hardcore Gamer's Confidant page, which I use quite often, for Chihaya, and I don't know if it was for the vanilla or royal version. They said she charges double. I should not have said my comment so confidently. I hope it's true. I save before every possible Confidant romance, so when I have 10 minutes or so, I'll boot her save up and verify before next week's episode. Last thing I would want to do is violate Barrett's trust in me, which I appreciate. And then also... thank you to Red Panda, Shen, Twiggly, and Elec for sharing all of their Palace rankings on the YouTube version of the show. Surprisingly, for me at least, of the 4 full rankings that I saw, only one had Futaba as number 1. That was Elec's. Twiggly, Figgly, and Shen both had Maruki's as number 1. Then Twiggly had Futaba at number 2. And Shen had Futaba at number 3. Red Panda had Kamoshida as number 1. And then
like that?
Futaba as number 2, and Maruki as number 3. So I think like those 3 are hanging in a lot of people's near the top.
Definitely. I mean, that was something we talked about with Barrett, right? Is like, even if the it's going to come down to personal preference, of course, because it's a personal preference sort of thing. But like, there did seem to be clusters in terms of like kind of some similar ones at the top, kind of some similar ones at the bottom, kind of some similar ones in the middle.
I will say, interestingly, other than Red Panda for Kamoshida at number 1, the other 3 all had Kamoshida at number 5, which is really interesting.
Like, again, the top
but
5
fair.
and 6 are all good, right?
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
It's not like you're saying any of those are bad.
Well, and even the worst ones for us, it's like there are still redeeming qualities. Like we said, even with something like Kanashiro's, which we put at perhaps a surprising last, like the music is still rad.
Yeah.
Makoto's transformation in there is really cool. Like there are elements of each of these, I think, that are cool and worth it and great. So yeah, appreciate everyone sharing those with us. But with that said, let's jump into this very long 2 days of a week. I almost said 2 weeks of a day.
Yeah.
Anyway,
it'll feel like it because it's so long, right?
It will. We're in March. We are in March. It's kind of weird.
Yeah, we are literally in March.
Literally.
One of the funny things when we got to this day was like it's funny when it has been a week and a half since these people have spoken, and it's like, oh yeah, it's also been like a week and a half since we've played, right?
Yeah.
Like, it is interesting that this would literally take place moments after you saw it before.
Yeah, it creates the gap that is artificially there in the game, like that you don't actually see take place. We've created that gap for us. Of course, as we said, if you're playing and you just wanted to see the end of the game, just play through the end of the game. We do not blame you. Sure. We think what we're doing is inherently silly to that extent in this part of the game. So,
but it is interesting to give context to how long all of these people have been thinking about
totally.
This, right?
Yeah.
To a certain extent.
Especially because these days we were presented with some life changes things. And of course, it's worth noting that Tom and I don't speak in between episodes as well.
Yeah.
We completely ignore each other in between. So it works out for the best. You monster.
To maintain the illusion
of our friendship. No, anyway, moving on to March 2nd. Tom, obviously we hate each other. After 48 weeks of doing this, we clearly can't stand each other.
Strictly business relationship.
Exactly. March 2nd.
House and Wilson.
Tom.
I'm turning over a new leaf.
I didn't even make the house reference. This is 48 episodes in and we're here. It means a lot to me. Anyway,
I wanted to find a way to make you feel like I care while telling you explicitly I don't care.
that's fair. Yeah, but it's because I know you secretly do. Anyway, March 2nd. Very brief day. Oh, I did want to mention, because I had to rewatch the cutscenes, because I know I had said I didn't see her on the chocolate giving day. I did see Takemi when I went through this time. Yeah. It just turns out she is also in the cafe right before Kawakami, and so I just kind of forgot about it, because it's very quick and very whatever.
You see Takemi in the cafe, and then you go up to your room, and then immediately you're like, oh wait, I gotta go back down, my teacher's here.
Yeah, and that's a bigger scene, so I think that just completely took over my brain, and I forgot to write down Takemi. So anyway, mystery solved. I did max out that confidant. We're all good. Stop the presses. We're okay. Anyway, March 2nd, Ryuji texts saying he wants to talk with everyone after school, asks if we can reserve the cafe, make sure we can use the space, and we all know no one's ever come to LeBlanc, so it's fine. We're able to use the space, and that's pretty much March 2nd. That's that day.
Yeah. Little text conversation.
And then in the afternoon, I went to go play baseball, and the joke's never going to get old. And then we move on to March 3rd, which is, as you had mentioned, sort of a big day. We get the gang together, and at first it starts from Ryuji's point of view, where he's like, hey, I wanted to gather us all together because it's been something I've been thinking about, and I you're all the people, Sojiro included. He actually asked for Sojiro to be there as well, right. Which again I think really solidifies how much Sojiro matters to this family. He's like, I want to let you all know I've been thinking about the future of things and kind of where things go from here, and he's really focused on wanting to get back on the track team and to really do something that he cares about in that way and really make that a big part of his life. But he's like, he still needs to go through physical rehab, so he's decided he's going to move closer to a physical rehab facility so it's easier to go to, and that will let him get back on the path to getting on the track team. He's probably going to be doing that in about a month is sort of the setup there. And then, that's a sad, a friend is moving away, but wait, there's more. And then we get, I think the best way to put it, as you did, Tom, in the run of show, is everyone is leaving. This is everyone kind of announces, we're drifting apart sort of thing.
Yeah, it's very sad.
It is. I guess I'll just go through what happens, and then we can talk about it in context rather than stopping in between each thing.
Yeah.
Just to save time on things. But anyway, Ann says she's going to look into studying abroad for a short term, but that means she'll be leaving, of course. Haru and Makoto, of course, are graduating, so they're going to be, moving away school-wise at least, but they're both looking for places to live on their own as well. Haru really wants to be learning about the business while going to school, so that's going to take up a lot of her time as well, and the two of them will essentially be away from each other in that regard, or from the group in total. And then Sojiro even prods Futaba to be like, hey, don't you have stuff going on too? And Futaba's actually going to be much busier because she passed the entrance exam and she's going to high school, and her sort of goal and trajectory is go to high school, go to university, and then be able to study cognitive science for real, make it her focus in her career and kind of live up to her family legacy. At this point, we start to really get the sense that Yusuke is very sad about things.
Yusuke doesn't have a lot going on.
No, Yusuke is like, oh, bummer, man, you're all... And then he's like, oh, but I should be happy for all of you. Anyway, I'm going to be working on this painting. I am not doing anything until I finish this painting. So he at least has a focus for now. Yeah. But Yusuke is very much like, I'm going to do this. It's been kind of what I'm working on since we all met, and I want it to be sort of a distillation of everything. And so he's focusing on that. Kind of mentions of how we'll always have our bonds together and be connected in that way. And then Ryuji says this is actually in part, and obviously this is new Royal Edition dialogue, but he says it's in part that his thoughts about moving away and doing this are because of experiencing Maruki's reality. Mm-hmm. Without having had that view at another life, but also being forced into another life, he didn't get to see what really mattered to him most, and so that gave him more of a realization of what he does care about here. And we already get the sense that some of the group has moved apart because Sumire is at summer camp training. Not summer, I guess, but training camp.
Convenient, isn't it?
It is. It's almost like they didn't have to animate another person into the conversation.
Sumire is at training camp? Oh, well, she left this thing for us.
Yes, she left a newspaper clipping that Futaba gives to the group. It was lying around after Maruki's palace collapsed, and it's sort of a newspaper clipping talking about the case of his loved one and the death of their family and things like that. So they all assume this is kind of his treasure, that the origin of his distortion and all of that, and so that kind of puts a button on that. We have his treasure, and Joker puts it away for now. I don't know if that'll come up later because I haven't seen the end of the game. I don't know, because I assume they'll put some more of a button on the royal stuff, but who knows? Tom obviously won't say anything. And then Sojiro's like, yay, we're all going to celebrate. Let's have a good time. You all can order whatever you want. Futaba immediately goes, it's an all-you-can-eat buffet. Let's do it. And then Sojiro's like, oh god, what have I gotten myself into? And then as they do this thing, I just wanted to point out, they do this thing occasionally where a scene is sort of fading out, and you'll get little bits of dialogue from everyone kind of talking at once.
Yeah.
But they don't put it on screen. And so you just kind of need to listen and just be in the environment. And I think it's Ryuji, and Ryuji just goes like, sushi, like really excitedly.
He does it super high pitch.
Yeah,
it's really funny.
It's super good.
And they do this a little bit in Royal. They have a couple moments of this in Royal where they just have these like cacophonous voice lines. But what's interesting to me is that if you listen in, they are like generally linear conversations, like call and response sort of things that could have been dialogue.
Yeah.
But instead they just sort of like play them really, really quick with some other things going on top to make it sound like they're just all chatting. Mm-hmm. But there is sort of a through line still.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely happened a few times, and I think I've meant to bring it up on the show when it happens, because I think it's really cute. And also, it's almost nice in a way that they don't put it on screen, because it is, you're more meant to just focus on the idea that, like, this is just a bunch of friends chatting. And I appreciate that it isn't, obviously it would be nice, I think, even from an accessibility issue, if you could see those things on screen. Sure. But in terms of, like, the intention of it, of just being like, here's just a few people chatting, what they're saying doesn't really matter so much as the tone and the exuberance of them all being together is what matters.
But also, Sojiro offered for food, and Ryuji's immediately like, sushi. It's like, have you eaten at LeBlanc before? You know what they serve.
Yeah. Also, whenever we go for sushi, it's really expensive, and you know how little money Joker has. So it's going to really be an issue to buy all that sushi for everyone. Yeah. But anyway, all that happens, and I think we can jump into it, but just worth saying before the end of the night, Sumire texts you that night. She texts you both a picture of the two of you at the shrine at the beginning of the year when everything started to happen in the royal content. And then she also texts you a photo of her at practice at her training camp that her trainer took of her. And she's like, this is me. This is, me really focused on what I'm doing, my craft, the thing I care about, and really living in the moment of that and getting better at that and caring about that. And you just kind of have one of those conversations of like, can I count on you to support me? And you can obviously be nice or a menace, I guess. But I think most of the conversation answers are like, yeah, of course I'll support you. And yeah, it's just a really sweet sort of Sumire coming to terms of here she was at the beginning of the year, just a couple months ago, still pretending to be Kasumi, still living in that version of herself. And now here she is being Sumire and getting to see herself succeed. Yeah. Which is very sweet. But yeah, just go ahead.
It's interesting. Like, the way they handled Sumire at the end here is really interesting to me. And I have to feel like it is because of what we were talking about, of it's easier to not animate her into that scene, despite the fact that they had all these other new voice lines in this scene, right?
Yeah.
But it feels notable to me, right? Like, it feels weird to me that everyone kind of gets this wrapping up moment in person celebrating together, and they're just like, oh, Sumira's at training camp. But she'll text you later.
Yeah.
And then that text conversation is like pretty emotional. Like, it's kind of heavy. And I don't know. It just feels odd. Like, it is we talked about before about how, on the whole, the new Royal Story stuff is very well integrated into the base game, and there are occasional bumps in the road, and this is just one of those bumps in the road.
For sure. Yeah, I think that, like you said, the emotion of it is really good. Like, I think everything, but it is something I wish they could have talked to each other in person about.
Go figure.
Yeah, I think it makes sense that she is, so focused now on this mission of really wanting to reach the top of the gymnastics world, and that's her focus, and so she's already, like, I think that makes sense. But yeah, again, this is something that everyone else got to have their in-person kind of conversation. It would have been nice to have that with her as well, but like you said, limitations with things.
And here's a lower stakes question. That photo of them at the shrine was taken in an alternate reality? How does that work?
Yes.
Does that not disappear? Did they do that in this reality too? Yes, because they made the plans before the reality changed.
Maybe.
I think that must be it. But no, he was in jail. He was in jail.
Was he? He would have been in jail the whole time. Yeah.
He would have been in jail when that photo was taken in this reality.
Yeah, he would have.
Which means that reality or that picture was from an alternate reality.
It was. I guess the alternate. Yeah. Man, Maruki, what did you do? You really you didn't clean up all of your leavings of this reality. What's happened?
Like, I'm not wrong about that. He would have been in prison.
Yeah, because they retroactively he has been in prison this whole time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Since December 25th.
Yeah. What a day to go to jail. Yeah. I guess so. I guess that picture...
And that was on New Year's Day.
Maybe it's sort of, again, because I think this was a conversation that came up from a comment like a week or two ago, and we're like, you just kind of got to go with it. I think we just kind of need to go with it at this point.
No, but... I want a dialogue with Futaba explaining how this happened.
I mean, hey, I don't know what happens in the next week or two, but yeah.
No, it is definitely one of those just go with it things. I don't care, but I think it's very funny.
No, it is, because you're totally right. He would have been in jail. I guess it is one of those things where it's like, they erased that reality from existing, but because they are aware of both realities, they have the memories, but yeah, why would they have the physical evidence of it? Because most people, right. Otherwise that's going to lead to so many questions. That's going to lead to existential crises for people.
Oh yeah, it's tons of questions. Yeah. Anyway,
I
like this conversation, this whole scene.
It's a good day.
It's very sad, but I like that they sort of put a button on the whole Phantom Thieves of being like, you're not just leaving, everyone is going and doing their own stuff. It's bittersweet, right?
Yeah.
Like, I like it. It's just also sad, but it is sort of trying to close the door a little bit, too.
It also, I think for me, it really plays into one of the other, like, genre tropes that this exists in that isn't game related, but, like, just storytelling wise of a group of teens coming together under like a specific goal, and then it's like, yeah, but they do have their lives, they are teens, they do have other focuses, they are growing up, they're getting into the rest of their adult lives, and so it is one of those things where it is the joke, I guess, of like Wet Hot American Summer of like, let's all come back in 10 years to the spot. Like that's what that conversation feels like, is like, yeah, we're all going apart, but we'll all have each other still. We'll be at this cafe right here. And it has that sentimentality to it. And I think it really works because, like we've said, after 100+ hours, for some people like 200, seeing this group drift apart, like it makes sense for their lives, but oh no, I don't want them to be apart. They should be together forever.
Yeah. The other thing I really like about this scene is what's been added in the royal stuff is I like that there's a line at one point where Ryuji's like, we all have to keep chasing our dreams as best we can. Otherwise, we'll let Maruki down.
Yeah.
Right? And like, I like that idea that even in the context of having defeated him and destroyed his evil plan, like, they know that he was trying to do something good. Like, in a bad way. And like, because they stopped everyone from their dreams being achieved, right? Just like at the, flip of a switch by somebody who had that power, they said, well, you know what? Maruki wanted this for us. So if we're going to stop him from giving it to us, like the least we can do is make it up to him by achieving those dreams ourselves. Right.
Yeah.
And going out and doing it ourselves, which is a nice message to have of like, I like that again, we talked about this with Barrett a little bit last week too. Like Maruki is such an interesting villain, quote unquote villain, and he's very complex. And I like that extends past defeating him.
Totally. Because it is like them wanting to achieve their dreams is a normal, natural thing. They just didn't want to achieve it under someone else's decision making. So yeah, it really worked well in that case of letting them kind of come to terms with this wanting to be their goal in life, but they've got to do it themselves now. And I like that setup for things. It's sweet, but it's also sad. Yeah.
Yeah. And I like kind of where they leave people, right, to the Ryuji going to physical therapy to get back in shape to do training, on trying to get back into her modeling, Haru and Makoto looking towards the future in terms of college and stuff, and then Futaba getting into high school is a nice little tease, and then Yusuke, they kind of just leave him in a lurch, but also that is very Yusuke to a certain extent.
I've got to do painting.
Yeah, I mean, that's his focus. That's his goal in life.
Yeah.
And so he's basically committing himself to it, is like, even though they play it up as kind of like he doesn't know what he's doing and it's kind of a joke, like I think it fits for him to be focusing on that, right?
Oh, totally. It is like he has this project that he wants to do and he's going to work toward it is his thing. And yeah, you're right. It's played for a laugh. It's played for like, well, what does Yusuke have going on? But it does also, I think, truly matter to him. And we know that because we've spent the time with him. But yeah, it is a very sweet, sad moment, but it's not the end. Like, this could have been directly, immediately the end, but it's not quite yet. We've got...
And we also get a very important moment where Morgana admits that he's a cat.
Yes, we do. I forgot
very
about
important.
That. Of course. I was trying not to say too much in case that was related to your quiz.
Yeah.
Hopefully
that one's too important to
that's
say for
fair.
the quiz.
Yes, Morgana's big goal in life is to be a cat now, and that works out for us. But Morgana is going to move with us, was I think where we left things last week as well. Like, the tentative plan is when we move away, Morgana's coming with us. So
yeah,
we'll have a nice life together, hanging out, solving local neighborhood mysteries. I don't know. I'll write this fanfic later. Yeah. But yeah, it's a sweet, sad, somewhat melancholic moment for everyone. But we've got more to see in the next couple weeks.
It sort of does the heavy lifting of setting up what's coming next, right? It's giving more than just Joker a conclusion, basically. And then, like, next week, or not next week, but the week after, we'll have sort of the actual finale that wraps all this up.
Exactly. And it is important, I think, that the whole group gets their focus and gets to be considered, because, they all matter to us, even if we've been playing as Joker. Like, their futures all matter, at least to me. But what also matters to me is saying which of them is the best.
Judging them harshly.
Yes, exactly.
Competition to the death.
Are you ready, everyone? Okay, we're going to rank the party members. Tom and I have not shared notes yet on who we prefer.
Sure. I do have a preliminary list of how I feel.
Cool. I have a general preliminary list as well. I would say the goal here would be to come together on a combined list. Yeah. I've gone into this in, again, a sort of holistic look of, their individual stories, the part they play in the overall story, their, importance in the team. Definitely, I think having some of them in my party for longer impacted me. I think if we were doing this list in just my base P5 playthrough, it would probably look a lot different than it did on this second playthrough, now that I've gotten to spend more time with them and appreciate their stories. Haru, I'm looking at you. Things I think are different than if you asked me this 2 years ago. So I'm excited to get into it. Just to run down the group that we're including, because we are, of course, including the royal editions and the people who are in your party, even if they're very late. But it's Ryuji, Morgana, An, Yusuke, Makoto, Futaba, Haru, Akechi, and Sumire.
Yes.
Those are the 10. Or is it 9? I think it's 9.
10 including Joker.
Do we want to include Joker in here?
No.
Is the question. Fair enough.
Joker is Joker. Joker is you.
That's why I'd put Joker at the bottom.
Oh gosh. No.
Anyway, we'll rank everyone but Joker in this grouping. And I don't really know where to start. with this because it's different than the palaces where, like, I think we both knew each other's number 1 and number 2 roughly, or like bottom 2 going in.
Probably still know number 1 here. Maybe.
I think I have one.
Well, to start, first of all, the normal caveat that we gave last week too, which is these are our personal rankings combined into some sort of average for the show. If you disagree, that's totally great and fine, and we'd love to hear why in the comments. It is absolutely not telling anybody that their opinions are wrong about anything or that these are the definitive, absolute correct choices.
Exactly.
Just putting that caveat out there.
Yes,
yeah.
It's very fair. I mean, that's, often what comes with these opinion things. We are not trying to state this as a fact. This is not fact whatsoever.
Except for number 1.
Which we all know is Chihaya.
Akechi. Oh. Well, okay.
You didn't unlock her as a party member? It's really fun, actually. She's really great.
Man.
Only. No, Akechi is my number 1 as well.
I'm putting it in all caps at the top.
No, I did a rough full confidant ranking list a couple of weeks ago, like every confidant, not just the party members, and still had Akechi as number 1. So, yeah, I understand that because I know, especially in the comments, we've talked with some people. Some people don't feel the same way we do about Akechi, and I think that's totally valid and totally fair. And you can look at some of the things he's done and be like, well, why would I like this guy, even with some of the good stuff? But I think for me,
he's evil.
Yeah, he is. But the emotional complexity of him, I think, is so deep and on such a different level from anyone in that game, and especially what Royal does for him with that final semester. Obviously we're in full spoiler territory for it, but like knowing that he went through all of that to sacrifice himself for essentially for somewhat of a selfish reason, but also inherently a non-selfish reason, is just so good. It's so well done. And I think like probably in the base game, I would have put him like middle, but because of everything Akechi does for me here and like what they've done for his story.
Well, the other thing about Akechi in the base game compared to Royal is, and I won't belabor this too much because we've talked a lot about Akechi on this show, but I almost see Akechi in the base game as like an NPC.
Yes. Yeah, that's
like fair. He is only in your party member for basically half of one palace, right? And then leaves, and then he's a villain the rest of the game. And his emotional depth and kind of story complexity is on level with an NPC rather than just one of the party members in how much he evolves and changes throughout the game.
Yeah.
And I think it really is Royal that takes him from being kind of this weird party villain NPC hybrid to being an actual member of the party and actually connecting with the characters and becoming more of a real kind of character in the game, beyond, instead of just like a villain or a prop in the first game. Not that he was a prop fully in the first game, but like it was different. And so I really appreciate Royal because it just makes him, maybe you could tie this with Maruki, but like probably I would argue the most emotionally complex character in the game. And I think Maruki is very complex, and I think there's obviously other people who are very interesting and complex characters, but like Akechi is just so interesting, and the choices they make with just letting him be evil the whole last semester but trying to do the right thing the entire time is so interesting. Yeah,
it's played really well. It's I think the NPC analogy perfectly nails it. He goes from someone who feels like any other confidant to now being an actual proper party member. And I think
not even any other confidant, because all his confidant rank ups are like size.
Yeah, you're right.
They're like in the base game, they're not even like interesting.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And
that was a joke with the base game for me, was like you would run into Akechi at a TV station and you'd be like, "Oh hey, how's it going? Cool,
friends,
confidant rank up," and you're like, "What? what's going on here?"
Yeah, it was more a factor of them wanting to make Akechi important, whereas I feel like Royal does put the proof into why he's important, very much so. So yeah, glad we're agreed on number 1. From there, I feel like our list might divert somewhat. Do you want to do, as we do at IGN with our top 10s, do you want to do like buckets of low, medium, and high maybe?
So like my kind of top people
Uh-huh.
are like, I mean, like I can just say like
Give me
my next
three that you really love.
the
Yeah.
next three for me
Yeah.
are Ryuji, Futaba, and Makoto. Because I love Ryuji so much, and then Futaba is just great, and then Makoto is best girl. So I have to admit that. But you know,
This is gonna go so well because those are literally my next three in a slightly different order. I think
oh yeah,
I have Futaba.
okay,
I let me find my list. I think I have Futaba, Makoto, Ryuji, or Futaba, Ryuji, Makoto. I have them in some sort of
okay,
order like that. So
but that's convenient.
that is, yeah, that is, yep, that is in that order. So
Wait,
yeah.
so what's the order that you had?
So I have Futaba, Makoto, Ryuji, but I'm willing to, I think, maybe put Ryuji a bump up because of how much he kind of matters to Joker regardless. Like I have Makoto I think a little bit higher because I've always just chosen to romance Makoto
So
and have
here's
that
the
attachment.
deal: is like
But
this is gonna get me run out of town on a rail. I am not as enamored with Makoto as the world
that's
is.
fair. That's fair.
That's not to say I dislike Makoto, because I think she has a lot of incredible moments. Again, we've talked about it already on this episode, but her awakening is incredible. She
Totally.
is super smart and clever in a way that is really cool. She is devious, but then also like her confidant line, she's very like vulnerable and clearly doesn't know everything in the way that she presents herself, which I think is really interesting. Her powers are really good, but then like I don't know, I've just like was never really like, a lot of people seem to be crushing on Makoto, and I never developed that crush, let's
That's
say.
fair. That's totally fine. So, but that puts us at an interesting point. And I'm willing to cede a little bit of ground on Makoto because of that. But then I do have Futaba ahead of Ryuji, whereas you had Ryuji ahead of Futaba. Or
Yeah, I'm fine with Futaba up if you
so
want to do that.
I think for me the Futaba of it all is
Futaba of it all.
the Futaba of it all
Our sequel
is
podcast. The Futaba of it all.
a 12-part introspection into the life of Futaba,
I
presented
wouldn't
by
put it past
NPR.
us.
Yeah, I think the thing with Futaba is because for me, again, I know the game presents her as like you can romance her, but for me, she is so, her, Sojiro, and Joker are so much of a family unit. Like
Sure.
she is bonded to Joker on a like family level for me, and I
Yeah.
think what Joker helps her go through, what Sojiro, and Joker share is a different level for me than everyone else. And also the fact that we get such a great palace from her as well, like such a specific focused palace from her emotion. The things she goes through, I really relate to in a lot of ways as well. And so for me, Futaba is like a number 2 pretty handily.
Yeah, I think that's fine. I don't disagree. She's a really interesting character. She ties into the larger story really well. She's very fun and funny the entire time,
Yeah.
right? Like she is a phenomenal character.
Yeah.
Like, definitely.
I am totally willing to put Ryuji third if that's how you feel. I think for me, the reason I am this turn is because I really came around on Ryuji. Like I said in the first game, I slid too much in the angle of like, oh, Ryuji is just the kind of annoying guy who just yells for real a lot. Like I didn't really spend time with him until the end of the game, and I didn't really care about him. And then I got to like actually give him a chance this time. And I know that's weird because he's literally the first guy you meet and is meant to be the person you give the first chance to, but I kind of ignored him. But I'm so glad I did because I do think like him as your number 2, like friend wise, works so well in this game. Like he is the ride and die like Dom and Brian, Fast and Furious wise with Joker. Like that's very much what I see the two of them as.
Yeah, and the thing about Ryuji too is that he's really easy to find just like as the annoying dumb guy archetype, which is super fair, right? Like cuz he kind of fills the sort of hot shot jerk who with a heart of gold archetype that's a nice guy but he's constantly too loud and he's constantly doing this and that. And I think that's a fine read of him. But the read I have of that character also is like a deeply flawed one who knows he's flawed and is
Yes.
constantly trying to do better, like in spite of himself. And I think that is so interesting to me that he's this guy that knows he gets hot under the collar too much and knows that he doesn't know everything and isn't always very smart, but is like consistently throughout the game trying to temper those impulses in himself and consistently trying to do better for his friends.
Yeah.
And I think that is so much more interesting of a character than just like the idiot archetype that he's sort of introduced as.
Yeah, and I don't think I let that second layer shine through enough on my first playthrough. Like, I don't think I gave it the time of day that it is in the game, and I just kind of let it go by because I was focused on other characters. And so, yeah, I'm very cool with Ryuji at 3, Makoto at 4. And I think...
I would put it that way, but I can... You remember when we said last week Kaneshiro below Okumura and Barrett, like, almost fell out of his chair? I can just, like, see Barrett doing that right now.
Oh, for sure. I mean, like, for me, Makoto would go next, and I think the reasons are pretty much everything you said, and it just, like, it endeared me on another level than it did for you. Yeah. I think even without romancing her, like, the really interesting struggles that we get to see from her in the game are a little bit different than almost everyone else. Like, we get to see her with Sai, and we get to see more of her family relationship and things like that in a way that play out that we don't get from mostly everyone else. Like, we do get on in the early, you know, with Kamoshida, or we do get it with Yusuke and Madarame, but with Makoto, it's sort of a throughout the game sort of thing, and I think we get more of a layered nuance and understanding of her as a result.
Okay, proposal. Ryuji and Makoto tied for third.
I can live with that.
Okay.
I can.
This is the only way that, like, we get out of this alive.
Perfect. That works for me. Because they're number 3 on each of our lists. So it works out there. We'll put it there. Yeah. We're good.
Because, again, once, like, all of these characters are great. Like, we started with the very top, and these are our favorite people in this game. And
yes.
There's not, like, you know, apart from Akechi, who I do feel very passionately about at 1.
Yeah.
All of these people are great.
I think on any given day you could ask me about the 3 of them, and I would put them at a number 2 depending on, like, how I was feeling emotionally about them at a given point in the game.
Yeah.
Moving on from there, so far then we have left...
This is also very unfair because you haven't played this yet, but Ryuji has absolutely one of my favorite moments of any character in Strikers.
Ooh,
and
okay.
It continues to influence how much I love him.
That's fair. That's very fair. I'm excited to get there one day. Hopefully soon. Hopefully very soon. Anyway, moving on from there, we have left on Yusuke, Haru, Sumire, and Morgana.
Yes.
So we still have the bulk of the list left, but...
Do we want to go to the bottom now, or is that too mean? Should we just keep going from the top?
I feel like it's too mean because we can then blame the bottom of the list of, like, well, we just ran out of spaces. Because again, I do think it's sort of, I think more so than the palaces, I like everyone in the party at a baseline level. Like,
okay, can I check who's your bottom though?
Okay.
I have Sumire in last.
Okay, I have actually let me, because I'm going on a gut instinct, but I did write it down. I have what may be somewhat controversial, but I have Morgana at the bottom.
Okay, we'll get there then.
That's less story related and more so like party and narrative wise. Like,
I get that. I
think Morgana in the context of, like, the whole group, there are things I like more, but having played through a second time, I feel like they kind of stick to just 1 or 2 personality things for Morgana, and just let that...
Morgana's a horny little jerk.
Yes, yeah. A horny little jerk who refuses to accept they're a cat. And it goes to some good places. I'm not going to say it doesn't again. I think I like everyone here at a baseline level more than I like every palace at a baseline level. But I also have Sumire at second to last. So
okay, I don't. Morgana's a horny little jerk, but I also still like Morgana, and I think a lot of the choices, or like the reasons that he behaves that way, are, like, understandable when you view them through the lens of, like, somebody who doesn't know who they are and
totally
is, like, frustrated about that, and like feels out of place in their own skin in a really like I think that character is, like, very interesting when you view it from that lens, but also that does not just excuse the fact that their behavior a lot of the time is pretty lame. Like,
I think for me also part of it is the second I got a couple good personas, I never really used him in combat because other characters got healing abilities, including both Joker and Makoto. And then Wind, I always had at least like one or two personas that had a Wind ability. And so Morgana was always weaker and like typically weaker than the other party members, and I had their powers covered elsewhere. So I also didn't use him that much this time around, which also
Morgana definitely feels like, if we're just talking about combat-wise, Morgana definitely feels like one of, if not the weakest character in terms of like raw damage ability.
Yes, yeah. They're good for support for sure, but yeah, for me it was very much like I found other people to be support just fine.
Yeah,
who are also stronger.
I'd agree with that.
But anyway, I will, because I don't think I'd be okay with almost anyone else in last. So I'm almost, though again, I think this probably will be controversial to some people. I don't know how Barrett feels about it actually, but because I didn't want to be spoiled on his feelings. But I am okay if we put Sumire last, if only because, to the point that we talked about a couple weeks ago, you don't really get to know who Sumire is until the last like 5-6 hours of the game.
Yeah, it's like the Haru problem amplified by 1,000.
Yeah, it's less.
You get to know this character Kasumi for a very long time, and then it's like a completely different character, and you get a month with her.
Yeah, it's less to do with who she is, and more the fact that we don't get to spend that time with who she is.
Yeah. So here's the deal. Sumire's story is good, right? I think that story is very dramatic and kind of melodrama, as we've talked about before, but it is interesting, and it is like that it makes that character interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I also just think that it is like a lot of her confidant storyline and a lot of the things you do with her are just a little bit repetitive and like a little bit they're all in service of a twist that happens late, right? There's so much setup with Kasumi of like talking about who she is and finding herself and her gymnastics problems, and then like all of that pays off in the third semester in Maruki's palace, and then it's just a different character, and like that means that a lot of the stuff that defined the character before, some of it carries forward and informs this new character in really, really interesting ways that they couldn't have done without doing all of this. And then other parts of it are just like, oh, that's just like gone because it wasn't actually who you were.
Yeah. I think,
and like,
I wish I had one more palace to get to know her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it leaves her in a little bit of a weird spot to me where like, I enjoyed her role in the new Royal Content story stuff. I enjoyed experiences with her. I think she's a funny, charming character with her, like, the recurring gag of, like, how she eats a ton. And clearly she's, like, really hardworking in her gymnastics, which is really cool. But, like, I can't shake this feeling with her that she's just, like, a little bit rushed or thin or like not fully incorporated and like not fully opened up in the way that all the other characters are. And again, being at the bottom of the list does not mean they're bad.
Yes,
it just means that they're less good.
Yeah, no, this is definitely a case of like, I really like Sumire, but especially within the context of the royal trio of Akechi, Sumire, and Maruki. She is my bottom of those three in terms of the characters I was most interested in and felt most moved by their stories. And then when you put her in context with the rest of the group of people who I've now spent 200 plus hours with, like it's hard to put her above people that I've really become invested in their stories in that way. Whereas like, yes, you spend the full game with her, but it is a much more limited scope. And the fact that we really only get to know the full character by the end, like you said, I think it sets up the twist and everything. And I think the twist reveal and everything is pulled off well. But as a result, we don't get to know this final character as well. And I like the trajectory she is on and wish we got to know her more, if anything.
Yeah.
So yeah,
okay.
That is a last but not worst. It's
Yes.
best to least best.
Yes, exactly. So we have 5 more.
Yes.
Do you want to go back up? And we can just keep jumping around.
Yeah, let's go back up.
Okay.
Who do you
My
have
next one was Yusuke.
Interesting.
I love Yusuke.
I was really gonna guess you were gonna have Yusuke toward the bottom.
No, I love
Okay.
Yusuke.
All right.
Yusuke is a weird. He's such a weirdo.
Yeah.
But I like how principled he is, and I really hated him the first time I experienced this game, and then I came around on him in a big way once I understood who he was more, and I just relate with this just like very weird creative soul that just like doesn't really care what, like, he's so focused on like what he likes and what he like believes in. I don't know. He's just I understand that might be a low or a high pick for him, but I really like Yusuke a lot. And also he is wildly powerful in combat.
Oh yeah, yeah.
He was in my party like always.
I will say, so like technically I think the way the tie would work is then there's no one in 4th place and we're just moving to 5th place is how the numbers work. But yeah, I have him next as well because I really have liked Yusuke from both of mine. I think there are definitely some moments that the game plays as like, oh, here's the creepy dude coming in. It's like not the best. Like his introduction is not really the best, I think, and a little weird. And I wish there was almost a little more like, hey, dude, you can't act that way. Like, I wish that was a little bit more in the game. But I'm with you in terms of this interesting, very principled, creative guy who is very, very focused on the purity of art and learning about that stuff versus the commercialization of art. Like, I think those parts of his story are really interesting. I think his relationship to Madarame is really well done. I think... when you pull all of that together and get a sense of what this character cares about and his context with the group, you get a really complex character who I think you might not assume is otherwise, especially if you go through his confidant line. It can be a little bit repetitive too of him like, let's try out a thing. Oh, so humans are more complex than that. I see. But I think they're all really funny vignettes often, or emotionally interesting vignettes. So yeah, for me, Yusuke was pretty high and I think works here in the middle as well. Like, I think it's a good spot for him.
Yay!
Who do you have next?
So I have Morgana next.
Okay. I have Haru next.
Diverge, and I had Haru above or just below.
Okay.
So I agree with everything we talked about with Morgana, but I also like just kind of how Morgana fits into the game world.
Yeah.
And I like the snarkiness sometimes, right? So that is kind of why I had it, but I'm happy to, if you're very low on Morgana, I'm happy to go lower because Haru is also like, I love Haru.
So
great.
I think my Morgana frustration is because I really did love Morgana the first time around, and I think part of it is born from having played the game a second time and knowing everything about that character and just wishing it would go at a faster pace, which is not necessarily fair to the character's story or anything like that, because that is coming from a second playthrough perspective and less of who these characters are and whatnot. And like my combat preferences aside, I do think you're right. Like, I do think there is a lot of great stuff when it comes to Morgana's questions of personhood and who they are, and especially with the royal twist of them becoming human for a bit is really funny, and pulled off in an amusing way, I think, and adds a layer to that question of who is Morgana.
Like the whole thing of Morgana running away, right?
Yeah.
It's like Morgana is a jerk during all of that, but I appreciate that they made this character a jerk for such identifiable reasons.
Yeah.
Right? Like that whole thing of him running away is all grounded very much in feeling like he's going to be abandoned or is being abandoned and sort of pushing people away first, which is a very real thing.
Yeah.
And I like that.
I think the thing for me too that I'm also forgetting is, like, no disrespect to our number 3rd tied place, but there are points where like Ryuji is the jerk at points too, where where Morgana
Yes,
is
Ryuji
flat
is
out,
a jackass sometimes.
yeah, treated wrongly and deserves better. And I do think I am just kind of forgetting those moments right now in the context of other character stories who I really got invested in, whereas I knew sort of where Morgana's story goes.
Yeah, makes sense.
I'd be willing to have Morgana right under Yusuke. I don't feel
No, if you want, because we're close, so we've been making concessions, right? So,
I
like, if your Morgana is much lower than mine, and our Haru is basically in the same place,
so
we can
yeah.
swap them.
For me, because Haru would have in the base game, I think Haru would have been last for me.
Sure. Yeah,
But
I'd
now,
probably agree.
now that I've gotten to experience Haru's full story and fully like seeing the character, and this is not just guilt over dumping her on her birthday, but I really do think Haru's story is really well told in the context of it does come too late for me still. I wish you got to spend more time with her as a member of the party. But Haru dealing with what she is going through over literally like the loss of her father in the midst of all these things and persevering and wanting to, you know, be this better person, understand the business, but want to get back to sort of the roots of what the business was about and the caring about people's interest in food and making people happy in that way. Like all of that stuff is, I think, a really deep character philosophy that you can very easily brush over if you're not focused on her toward the end of the game, which admittedly you might not be. But I think if you get the time to, there's a lot to really care about and invest in that character. And I think it's really well told. Again, I think it comes too late, but also,
Yes.
again, Lifewall is just the best. So, you know,
I mean, if we're doing this off of combat prowess, Haru is number one.
Haru is up. Yeah. But no, I would be okay with Haru at 6 then, if that is cool with you. Cool.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I agree with everything you said. I think Haru is an endearing character that you do not get enough time with, and has a lot of complexity that I appreciate kind of on a second playthrough a lot more, and especially on a third playthrough, and especially on a royal playthrough where you get more time to hang out with her and you get more time to learn about her. Yeah, she's a cool character for sure.
And then we've got...
But I also completely agree that if this was base game, she'd probably be last because she's just introduced too late.
Yeah. And it's, you know, I prioritized her this time around to be able to experience the full story. But if you don't, she can feel like a very nothing character other than when you're in the Okumura space station, like going through all that.
She also is a character, and all the characters have this, but yeah. Yusuke and Haru both, and especially Haru, are a character that like have a lot of really important lines in dialogue, like normal dialogue, where they'll be the one to kind of point something out that is like very insightful and sort of like needs to be pointed out occasionally. I think she's good at doing that, which raises her up in my eyes for sure.
Totally. And then moving on from there, we've got...
So we have Morgana and On.
Yes.
And so I assume that means you had On at 7?
Yes.
So how would you feel about Morgana at 7 and then On at 8?
I am...
Because On is my 8.
Yeah,
so we could swap.
I'm good with that. I think... On, yeah, again, I like all of these characters, so it's literally like there's no one here where I'm mad at or don't like. It's just one of those like, man, when I'm looking at this in order, I think I'm good with Morgana above On because of the connection that Morgana has with Joker. I think On gets a lot of really good stuff in the beginning, obviously dealing with everything. I think that's all really well told, and I think her passion for wanting to save her friend and fight against Kamoshida. And I think pushing against the idea of like, she is presented as like the hot character, but she's more than that. And I think the game does a really good job of proving that in the same way it proves Ryuji is not just the hothead jackass sort of guy.
She is in my opinion, an underutilized character after the beginning of the game.
Yes,
right?
100%.
Because she has all those sort of arcs and that growth and that bucking the trend of you're not who your mask makes you seem like you are. But then after sort of that early point in the game, she doesn't really get a lot of like distinct moments of her own outside of jokey ones, Whereas Ryuji is given a lot of moments to sort of prove himself, like that boat scene most explicitly on Shido's Palace, or prove himself in dialogue, like just in this week, right? Being the one to call everyone together to be like, listen, I need to set this straight so I can talk to you all, right? And An is never really given those opportunities in the same way, which is a shame because I do like her as a character.
Yeah. I think what we're saying is if there were like 3 less party members, everyone would be like an A tier character because they would get the time to shine in that way. But yeah, I am very much with you. Like An, I think gets so much great stuff toward the beginning of the game and so much emotionally strong and interesting stuff, and then does fade a little bit more into the background where, yeah, like as you said, Ryuji gets that stuff. Even Yusuke, like he gets jokey lines more often, at least. Like he at least sort of has that going on. An will get lines occasionally, but I feel like it's often juxtaposed with Morgana's crush on her more than anything.
Yeah, and Morgana and Makoto always gets to like be the smart one saving the day, right? And Futaba gets moments like that too. Like it really is An just gets pushed aside at a certain point, which is a shame.
Yeah.
And on top of that, and this is, again, because we're mixing all this stuff together, I barely ever use An in combat. Like I almost never used her after, I got other party members to do so.
I did in the base game, but I barely used her here, especially because I found some amazingly powerful fire combatant, like personas.
Yeah, fire. It feels like fire personas are pretty easy to pick up.
Yeah.
It feels like wind and electricity and these other kind of abilities are like electricity you can use to technical people really easily, and you can do that with fire too, but it's just like kind of not as, I don't know, I just never used her really.
Yeah, I would dip in and out of using An because I felt like, well, she's one of the originals, I want to use her more, but I found less and less reasons to do so as the game went on. But yeah, I like all of these characters, and I think they're all great. So
An is a great character.
Exactly.
She's not bad by any means.
I think literally this bottom of the list we're advocating for, we wish they got more time or more focus or,
Right.
I'm curious what they do with Persona 6, because I do almost think there's a world where you can do a game like this with fewer confidants and fewer party members, but give them more depth and more focus, like almost a round 1 with each of them and then a round 2 kind of thing.
Sure.
Where they get a secondary focus late in the game. I don't necessarily think they're going to do that, but I'm just saying like that is an option
like
to
a
me.
Mass Effect 2.
I've never played.
Oh, okay.
I was going to say a Kingdom Hearts 2, because that's what they do with the worlds. You go back to all of the worlds and get a second story. So
apparently sequels love to do this.
They do. So that's why we're saying Persona 6 should be Persona 5-3, I guess, since Strikers exists.
Yeah. Strikers gives people a little bit more moments, but not everybody.
Fair.
Yeah. So it sounds like we have a list.
I think we do. Our final list comes down to I'll start from the bottom. Sumire at number 9. Again, this is from least best to best. Sumire, An, Morgana, Haru, Yusuke. 4th is non-existent. Tied at 3rd is Ryuji and Makoto.
I love that so much.
I do too. It's because we're scared of Barrett, I think. Futaba at number 2, and Akechi in all caps at number 1. And that is our list. But of course, if you feel differently, as Tom said, this is not a stated fact. We want to hear your opinions as well. You can either leave them on the comments on the YouTube version of the show, right into dornology@gmail.com, or, just tweet at us. I'm at JM Dornbush. Tom is at Tom R. Marks. But before we get into the full wrap-up about the show, Tom, let's just very quickly do a Persona pseudonym and a pop quiz, which, Tom, right next to it, you've written thing.
Yeah, I have it. Don't worry about it.
Okay.
You were already in the doc when I was going to paste it, and so I just didn't paste it.
That's fair. Well, with that said, my Persona pseudonym for you, I'm dipping far back, I think. Who's the troublesome housemaid?
What? You're making these up.
Just because it says house in the name doesn't mean I'm making it up.
Oh, is it that ghosty lady with the dress?
If you can give me a color description, I'll give it to you.
Kind of like bluish green?
That's her hair color.
Yeah.
You might be thinking of another ghost lady, but...
Oh, okay.
This character does have green hair.
Okay. Is her... So Is it Selkie?
You were so close. I kind of want to give it to you.
Kelpie?
It's Silky.
Silky.
Yes.
Ah.
I was hearing the E.
Silky.
Yeah.
Oh man.
But yeah, it's Silky. She has like an orange
Silky
dress.
Is what I meant. I just like said Selkie because
it's like
Selkie a persona?
It's like a Wordle guess. You were off by a vowel and then you just put in the right vowel. I'm looking up Selkie as well, but I don't know. Because Selkie is like a Celtic and Norse mythology thing. So it very much could be.
Silky? Okay, so Silky is the exact one I was thinking of. Yes. It's the lady, that was the blue-greenish lady with the dress. Yes, that is actually the one I was thinking of. So I did conceptually get this right, and the name I got just a little bit off.
Perfect. There is Selkie, who is in the Megami Tensei wiki, but I don't think they're in Persona 5.
Okay, so I think I just got the name a little bit off.
Yeah, but I think you had who you meant. So I'll give that one to you.
I'm not gonna lie. I did not think I was gonna get a single one from these old ones.
That's really impressive because I barely remember anyone from the start. Like name-wise.
Is like, I was just thinking about like the dress, and she has this sort of like thing in her hair that's like a kind of Handmaid's Tale sort of like thing going on.
I keep wanting to say a bonnet, but not a bonnet.
Yeah, it's similar.
Yeah. Well, congratulations to you on that. What is your pop quiz thing for the week?
Okay.
How arcane is this question?
It's not very.
Okay.
It's just pulling out a little thing about our tied for number 3 Ryuji. Ryuji wanted Sojiro there too. At this meeting he called this week. And Sojiro says, I can go if you want me to go. This is weird. If you guys just want to talk, like I can go. And Ryuji says, no. And he says, I want everyone blank to be here. And he says basically a kind of category or a reason of people that he wants to make sure are here so he can talk to. And what I want to know is, what is his description? What is his catch-all? What is the category of people that he wants to make sure are here that he can talk to for this and tell?
Everyone
That's
cool.
The question.
Just everyone
Not
who's cool.
Not at all.
All right. Well, please leave your answers to that in the comments for this week's episode. Again, youtube.com/Dornology. Or you can write in with any longer questions to dornology@gmail.com. Please put a Persona 5 related headline so I know what it is. And again, you can find us both on Twitter. If you're enjoying the show, I know we're wrapping up, but please don't forget to like, subscribe, thumbs up, 5 stars, whatever it. Leave a review. It helps the show get out to more Persona fans, which we want to do because we've been loving doing the show and want to share it with more Persona fans. And for when, we have our plans in the future to come, we'll talk about that stuff in a couple weeks. But for now, that's going to about do us for this week's episode. It's getting real late outside. Morgana telling us to go to sleep. I don't have anything else cool to say. I was trying to think of something to set up for next week's episode, but we're hopefully going to have a fun episode for you next week. And I'll leave it there. So, with that said, thanks so much for joining us. And as always, nice to steal you.